So what is the worst thing that could happen to a home buyer in home buying process? In my opinion, it's wire fraud. English, Korean accent. So you're gonna know it's really going to be hard to fake my accent. And I stutter a little bit too, so it's even better encrypted. Okay, that's better. Yeah, I'm actually facing west and I have a window right there. Hi, my name is Shawn with the Shawn Realty, and today I'm going to talk about the wire fraud in home buying process, which is probably the worst thing that could happen to a home buyer, worse than potentially losing a home that you bid on. Because let's say if somebody's buying with cash, the full cash, like $500,000 home, sending $500,000 wiring to the closing office, and then that money is gone. And by the time they find out, it's already in some other country where those hackers are. So just to give you some stats, and I'm going to talk about how they actually do hacking to take that money and how they get involved in the process to know that information, how they approach you. And then I'm going to tell you how to avoid that problem, and I'll give you some specific ideas. And then lastly, I'll give you some like a cybersecurity sort of general idea that could hopefully help. So let's talk about the stats. It looks like the wire fraud, the identity fraud, and all of that is about $1 billion loss every year. Out of that, based on last about 3-4 years, it averages anywhere between like 200 to 300 million dollars, million with M, in home buying process. That means somebody lost their life savings on down payment and closing cost, and in the worst case scenario, when they were going to pay with the cash, the whole thing is gone. So somewhere in like 10,000, maybe 15,000 buyers are the victim of this issue every year. And so it is a pretty significant issue. So here are some ways the hackers get into the email account and send like fake email, fake text, fake call, and all of that. There's two ways they call it the phishing. It means basically they use fake email account or fake phone numbers, and they pretend like they're the escrow officer or the closing officer or attorney, depending on which state you live in, and basically say, we need this closing costs and down payment by today in order to avoid closing delays. So that's probably like a fear to many buyers, not be able to close on a property that you've fell in love with. So they know which words to use to give you that the urgency for you to act on. And this is one thing that I'm going to remind you later, but do not rush in the home buying process, especially when you're sending that big chunk of money. And then the other way they do is called spoofing. So they can somehow redirect their phone number and hide their real phone number. So when you see it on your phone, it looks like it's coming from them, but they basically masked their real phone number with people that you know. So you can't even trust that. So how can you tell? Well, if you met the closing officer in person and had a quick chat when you were like dropping off your earnest money, it might be a good time to establish who she is, how she speaks. So if you get a call from her, then it is real, more likely. But if you're not, it's really hard to know. So in my opinion, me as a real estate agent, I don't really get involved in that, the wiring conversation or email or instructions or anything like that, because I don't know whether my email is hacked or not, whether they're watching me, like 24/7, especially during those like closing time period, like 1 week before closing time? I don't know. And there's chance that the escrow officer's email has been compromised. They can just tap into it. So what they do is, like, right before closing, they keep track of and follow all the communication, email, da da da. And by the time the wire instruction is being sent, they basically put their own email and plug that in with the different information. The email address could have just one letter difference. There might be one number difference, but sometimes it's same, which is the scariest part. But they plug in their own bank account routing number, and that they just plug that in. So you're following along this chain of emails, and you wouldn't suspect. And once you send that money, more likely within a day that money is gone. It's not recoverable because they're in countries that we can't really go after. Here are some specific things to do for you to avoid the wire fraud. So, for example, you might want to make a trip to escrow office, especially when you have to drop off your earnest money. Just go ahead and pick up the wiring instruction that is written on the paper from the office in person. Pick that copy up so you know which bank, the account number and routing number, and have them just give you that copy. That might be one of the safest one. Oh, before that, the safest one is not actually doing the wiring transfer. Instead of wire transfer, you do what's called a cashier's check. You basically go to your bank, have them cut you a cashier's check, and you hand deliver that to the escrow office. That's going to be the safest one because there's no wiring involved even. But let's say you don't feel comfortable, so you're going to wire. But the next best thing is to pick up the wiring instruction from the escrow office and just make a visit. It takes maybe 1 hour to save that your life savings. It might be worth it. And here are some things that you should not do. You don't trust anything that comes through email when it comes to wiring instruction. Even text, because they can hack into your text, believe it or not. There's such thing as like the apps like Signal, Signal, that is like the end-to-end encrypted. They're maybe a little bit safer, but regular text like your iPhone, Verizon, T-Mobile, they're all hackable. It's really easy to hack. So don't trust that. And even phone calls. If somebody actually calls you, hey, this is escrow office, this is John Smith, and you really need to send that wire today in order to avoid delay. See right there? Somebody rushes you like that, you need to step back and take your time. And then the other thing that you can do is you might call the escrow person directly. You can Google the number, or you can have your agent call your agent and verify what's the escrow officer's number. Write it down rather than text or email looking at that information on those. So calling might be one of the best things, especially outbound call, because you can control who you're going to call. When you receive a call, you don't know who is really calling unless you know that person, or unless you, I don't know. The only way really to tell is you have to know that person. Like if me, Shawn, your agent, call you, you're gonna know my English, Korean accent. So you're gonna know it's really going to be hard to fake my accent. And I stutter a little bit too, so it's even better encrypted. But other than that, making outbound call is going to be one of the safest. The sun is just like right on my face. I hope you can see me okay. Or maybe I will look better because of the sunlight to hide all my moles and stuff. Anyways, the other thing that I mentioned is just cutting that cashier's check from your bank. That's, like I said, one of the safest one. And then if you have to wire calling the escrow and confirm the receipt within like 1 or 2 hours, that might be a good practice, because if they haven't received, then you may need to call your bank and the law enforcement to stop that wiring. Because based on my internet research, if you can call within a couple of hours, you could actually block the wire going out. And sometimes it's like like half recoverable or whatever. Data could be different depending on what kind of bank, what kind of timing, and so it's really hard to know. So the best thing is to prevent that happening in the beginning. And sometimes you have to listen to your gut feeling. Things don't really line up. Then it might be safer to call your bank and stop that wiring. It's better to delay the closing maybe a day or two because of this issue, rather than you basically losing that money and not be able to buy that property. And depending on my experience, delaying a day or two close should be understandable. I'm not saying that it's always okay, because that could actually kill the deal if you don't close by a certain date. But with special circumstances like this, it might be better to close late and be safe than try to close on time and rush and send the money to somewhere else. Here are some day-to-day practice to prevent the cyber attacks. First thing that I would not do is use public Wi-Fi. If you go to Starbucks, if you go to some other local coffee shop, don't use that public Wi-Fi, because if they have a program, if somebody has bad intention, which seems to be the case all the time, because these hackers, they have bad intention. They're out there to steal your money. Same thing, these hackers who may have the access, or it's super easy to hack apparently. I don't know how. But if you go into, let's say, Starbucks and you tap into their Wi-Fi, they could actually read every keystrokes that you make. And in there, you're going to have, password or email address, or any kind of communication can go to somebody else's computer. So don't do that. And add two-step verification on your text. Preferably use programs like Signal, which is the end-to-end encrypted text service, or you can make calls too. But the regular text, like I said, they're not safe. But go ahead and put the two-step verification, so it's one more step for preventing that hackers to get into your account. And then the other thing is changing your passwords often. I try to do it every 2 to 3 months. At least every 6 months, my email passwords are changed. Apparently, if you do like a mixed lowercase and uppercase and do some kind of phrase with the numbers and special characters in between and make it long, that's safer than randomly generated by your computer, apparently. That could change when you watch this video, so I'm not sure, but change your passwords often. And to avoid spoofing, I wouldn't pick up the phone calls from the numbers that you don't recognize, because once you pick up the phone, there's some people out there know that your phone number is real number, and then they do stuff with that information. It's so dumb, but that's what they do. And lastly, go ahead and put some kind of firewall on your computer and phone and any kind of devices, and you try to use a VPN, the virtual private network program. Sometimes a lot of times you have to do, subscription, like $10 a month or something like that. But I think it's really worth it, because what it does is, let's say you are at your home. If you turn your VPN to hacker, I should look like I'm in Seattle. I'm in Portland. So it kind of hides my location. So that's really useful too. So sum this up, to sum it up, don't be a victim on this one. Like when I work with the buyers, I just remind them like crazy. I call them, I text them about this issue, to not to trust any like wiring instruction information from any email. That includes, by the way, the secure server emails too, where nowadays the escrow office will send you the secure email that you have to log into. That can be still hacked too, because if your keystrokes are hacked, they're going to see everything that you type in, and they're going to make another secure server email look like that, but you may not be able to tell whether that's from them or not even. So I wouldn't even trust that. They're going to try to outsmart us. In 5 years, they may have even different tactics that I haven't even mentioned. So be careful out there and talk to your people, your network of agents, closing office, lender. Talk to them, be in communication. And this is another reason why, like, working with the lender and agents locally who are reputable, I think it's gonna help. So be careful out there. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. You know how to find me. If you like this content, please share it with your friends so your friends aren't not going to become the victim of this wire fraud. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.